So we're here in Clearwater, Florida, over here at Natural and Cosmetic Dentistry, and I started this process about a week and a half ago, where I came in to get a assessment for a night laser treatment, which was going to help me with my sleep apnea. But in meeting with Maria, who is a myofunctional therapist, she discovered, and I'm going to show you today in depth, that I have a very unique situation happening in my mouth. I had orthodontics done when I was about between 10 and 14 years old. And I had actually a perfect overbite when he began, but I had a bunch of teeth in my upper jaw that my bicuspids were higher. And the orthodontist took all 4 bicuspids out, and he narrowed my mouth to the point where it's really kind of a terrible situation I got going on. I have the room for the tongue in the top of my mouth is about the size of my index finger. Actually, it's smaller than that. It's probably the size of my pinky. So I have no real room in my roof of my mouth to be able to place my tongue that allows my airway to open up. And she's going to tell you a lot more about that. So I'll hand it over to Maria, who's going to explain exactly what this means, because, I thought it was so important that I do this in depth and show you my pictures and really kind of lay it all out for you, because I just wish my parents were armed with this information. I never would have gotten the treatment plan that I gotten. I would not have chosen to have my bicuspids taken out. And now I understand in a way that I never had before. I couldn't even imagine that, how important your mouth is to your overall well-being and how everything is tied together. And it's going to be a fascinating bit of information here for you. So let's get into it.
Audio Jungle.
So thank you, Maria, for being willing to share all this, your information with us.
Sure.
So this is my mouth, so tell me about it.
That is. So I'll start with the first thing you said was that he took out 4 bicuspids.
Yeah.
And narrowed your arch.
Yeah.
Well, small thing is that your arch was already narrow, which is why the teeth didn't fit.
Oh.
And so by extracting the bicuspids, it just made the situation worse, not better. It was already narrow, and extracting the bicuspids just kept it narrow rather than making it narrow, just to clarify.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
It's already narrow, yep. So when I saw your pictures, I thought, my goodness, there's not a lot of room for your tongue. So we look in here, and you've got, this is, your tongue in your mouth, and I don't see your airway, right? I don't see the back of your throat. I don't see the uvula. And that's concerning because we want to be able to see the airway. We want to be able to know that you are able to breathe well.
Right.
And so this was the first thing that I saw, and I thought, well, let's investigate a little further. And we here at our office, we take photos of everything so that we're not missing a beat.
Right.
Teeth are very straight, though, very pretty.
Talk to my cosmetic surgeon.
So in this next photo, we have you stick your tongue out. So the first photo, tongue's in the mouth, and that's, that's where it is, right? Nobody walks around with their tongue hanging out of their mouth, right? But if we were to take the tongue and pull it out of the mouth, how much of your airway can we see now, right? And
not much.
Not much, right? Not very much. So we already know you came in with a pre-diagnosis of sleep apnea. So you already knew you had sleep apnea. Our thing is to find out why you have sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is an obstruction of your airway. So our concern is what is obstructing your airway. And it's very clear in this situation that it is your tongue. And the soft palate that we call the back of the roof of your mouth is your soft palate, kind of hangs down as well. And so then when we look at the roof of your mouth or the palate,
wow.
Okay, we can see, like you said.
It's about a pinky's worth.
About the size of your pinky, right? There is not a lot of room for your tongue to rest in the roof of the mouth. A lot of people will say, well, why does my tongue have to rest there, right?
Right.
Many people think that their tongue should be lying on the floor of the mouth. They don't even realize that there is actually a home for the tongue. And so I like to use my little skull here, you know, but the way the face grows determines how the teeth come in, right? So the skeletal structure is the foundation for the teeth. If the skeletal structure does not grow wide and forward enough, then there will not be enough room in the parameter for the teeth to come in, which was your situation. That's why you went to the orthodontist. There wasn't enough room for your teeth.
Right.
So there are two ways to approach that orthodontically. Symptomatically, look at the teeth and just make the teeth fit in the small skeletal structure.
Right.
That's,
which was the 70s for you.
Right, okay.
80s, actually.
And then the other approach is to say, well, why don't the teeth fit? And go to that point. Fix the why. And the why is because the skeletal structure did not grow wide and forward enough. Why? Well, your tongue probably wasn't resting on the roof of the mouth, okay? Could be a number of reasons. Tongue tie, okay? So some people understand what a tongue tie is. The tongue is basically kind of sitting at the floor of the mouth, and it's restricted. It has a hard time getting to the roof of the mouth. It could be low tongue posture or low muscle tone, just the inability to get the tongue to the roof of the mouth because the muscle is not strong enough. Or you were born with smaller jaws and the tongue just didn't fit.
Right.
And so then it would sit on the floor of the mouth, okay? So it could have been a number of reasons. We don't really know at this point, right? Because that was before I met you.
Right.
But what we know now is that there isn't enough room and we need to make room.
So just a moment, I'd like to ask you, you know, for a child that is going through this kind of a situation, because obviously from the time I was born there was some sort of obstruction going on because there's just not enough room, right? So could you tell us about the situation of the different maladies that children can experience because of this issue and what they're discovering about that?
Sure, like maybe some of the signs the parents might go, oh, maybe this is a contributing factor.
Right.
Sure. Some things are children that are sucking pacifiers beyond 6 months of age, or they suck their thumb or their fingers. Some kids I see sucking 2 fingers. They're really trying to open up the airway space. Another one is they have sleep issues. They have a hard time either A, falling asleep, or when they do fall asleep, they toss and turn. They're like pinwheels in the bed. They wake up multiple times in the night to go pee, or they wake up to go sleep with mom and dad because, you know, they're not comfortable in their bed, or they have nightmares. Disruptive sleep basically is a sure sign that there's a potential airway issue. Bedwetting beyond potty training years. Difficulty eating. They're picky eaters. They, you know, only want to eat soft, mushy foods, chicken nuggets, pizza, you know, things that don't take a lot of time to chew and swallow.
Interesting.
Because the airway is too narrow.
Right. And what is the connection with the airway and issues like ADHD, et cetera?
Absolutely. When you have an obstruction in the airway, it is difficult to breathe, which means you're not getting enough oxygen to the brain. So it's not enough to breathe. I mean, we all breathe, right? It's not about whether or not we're breathing in and out. It's whether or not we're breathing efficiently and effectively to release the oxygen from our blood to our organs, cells, and tissues. And so if we're not oxygenating well, the brain doesn't operate at its best capacity.
Right.
Studies have shown that children and adults with restrictive airflow to the oxygen to the brain have lower IQs. It does not mean that they are unintelligent. It just means their IQ could be higher.
Right.
Right? There are studies that come out of Australia. I believe now children that are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, 78% of those are actually airway-related issues.
This is what I find fascinating, and that really in America we really haven't made that connection, or the American Doctors Association hasn't really made that connection between the airway and, you know, the precedence of ADHD.
There are studies out there that is available. You can find them online. I would say it's just not something that's talked about very frequently. I don't know why.
Right.
Right? I don't know why, but it is something that we should be, in my opinion, investigating.
Right.
I have a son personally who is now a product of what I didn't know then that I know now.
Right.
And I wish I did, because he had issues in school. You know, lots of different things that probably could have been prevented had I treated the real issue.
Right. Well, I felt so compelled to tell this story and to share my pictures with everybody because, wow, if my parents had this information when they were making choices for me, I might be in a very different situation now, you know? And I just thought it would be a great service for all the mothers, parents, and grandparents who might, you know, come across my channel to hear this and to see it because, heck, help the kids out. They need it. Don't go down that path of, you know, creating more of an issue than making the choices that you could make to really help them get the help they need. So now what I found is, you know, I came here because I wanted to get this night laser, which shrinks the tissues in the back of the throat. Well, they can't get the laser in my mouth because of the situation. So now I'm in a completely different, you know, treatment pattern than I would have been otherwise, right? What are the treatments for something like this?
Sure, there are many options. So, you know, a trained dentist would have to do a full evaluation and determine the right approach for each individual. So I'll go over the various different options that, you know, that I'm aware of, and there might be some out there that I'm not.
Right.
But for starters, we want to start with myofunctional therapy. Myofunctional therapy is helping to retrain the tongue to sit in the proper position, which is up at the roof of the mouth, up and out of your airway, if you will. And help with lip closure so that we can establish nasal breathing and good function when you swallow. So chewing and swallowing, and get that tongue to move the way that it should, so that I know a lot of children that say they choke when they eat, or they feel like the food doesn't all the way go down all the way their throat. And that's because the tongue is not moving well enough for to push the food down the esophagus the way that it should. So we do some myofunctional therapy to get better oral rest posture, get the tongue out of the airway. We look for tongue ties and lip ties to see if we have any tissue that is restricting the function of the muscles. And if so, we would do what we call laser frenectomy, and we would remove that tissue with a laser to, if you will, to free the tongue and free the lips so that you have good motion, good function.
Right. But that option isn't even available to me at this moment, right?
So in a situation like this, we want to make sure there's room in the home for the tongue, right? So there's a book that I recommend written by Dr. Felix Liao called 6 Foot Tiger, 3 Foot Cage. Okay, the tiger is your tongue and the cage is your mouth. If the mouth, the roof of the mouth is not big enough to house your tongue, then we want to address that. We want to get some space for your tongue before we just release it, if you will. Because the tongue won't know how to sit up there if there's no room, and it could make matters worse, meaning if we just release the tongue or do a tongue tie release and it doesn't have a home to sit into, it's really going to fall back into your airway more than it already does.
Right. Well, it's so funny. I've never been so aware of my breathing, or like that my tongue doesn't fit in my mouth as I have been in this last couple weeks. It has been really odd because, you know, I had been speaking to the dentist here, Dr. Carlson, and she had been, you know, trying to tell me how to move my tongue out of the way. There was this brace that I was trying to use, and I was just like, well, I think I'm doing that, but I'm not doing that. And there was this real disconnect because, you know, unbeknownst to me at the time, I wasn't capable of doing that. There was no way that I had a context to understand what they were telling, because, you know, I've been basically sleeping with my teeth resting on my tongue for years, you know, and it's just like a whole other universe here for me.
Yes.
And so I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, so basically we need to create some more space.
Yes. And so to create space, there are different ways to expand the upper arch. There are various appliances that can be used to do that. Some are removable, so you put them in at night and take them out in the morning and start to expand.
Do you have one of those over here or not? Something like that?
I do. So if you want to take the pink one there.
This one? Oops, got both of them.
Yeah, there's an upper and a lower. So one fits in the upper roof of the mouth like this. Kind of looks like a retainer, right? And one on the lower. And there are screw mechanisms built inside the appliance. And you would make tiny adjustments each, about every 2 weeks or so. You would make tiny adjustments and it expands the appliance like so, okay? As the appliance expands, It's corresponding with the sutures you have in your palate. And so then the palate will also expand. And so we're dealing with the skeletal structure. This isn't really about again, it's not really about the teeth, it's about the skeletal structure and making room. Okay.
So actually I could end up looking quite a bit different around like the nose and the
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll have more space.
Correct. Your cheekbones will be fuller. You'll have a more chiseled jaw. And it's not. It's
I always
not
wondered.
dramatic.
I always thought, where is my chin? What happened to it? I didn't get one.
Yeah. And it's not dramatic enough where people are like, "Who are you?" But
Right.
but it'll be something you'll notice.
Right.
Yeah, something you'll notice. Some situations require some surgery. Not all situations. Some situations would require an appliance that is what we call fixed. It's just placed in there permanently for a period of time to do its job, which is, again, expanding the upper arch. So there are
Right.
various different ways to do that. In very young children, we have the opportunity at times to get expansion just by doing myofunctional therapy, just by retraining their tongue to get to the roof of the mouth, retraining all their oral muscles, getting good muscle function and habits in place. Very young children could get the expansion they need without ever using an appliance at all, and have room for their teeth and room for their tongue and nice, good airways. So
Right.
the younger we start, the better,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that we're ever too old to address it later in life, which is good news.
Absolutely. Well, what I also found was fascinating is that the profound effect that the airway functionality can have on your weight. And Maria has her own story to tell about that. So tell me about what you discovered doing this myofunctional therapy
Sure. So,
without all the problems.
well, actually, I was diagnosed with mild sleep apnea
Uh-huh.
in 2010, I think it was. I don't quite remember. I had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I had chronic asthma, allergies, and I was obese. I wasn't just overweight, I was clinically obese. And I tried everything to lose weight. I was seeing a personal trainer, eating healthy, doing all the things dieting, all the different diets, and might lose 20 pounds here and there and gain it back.
Right.
And in the years that I've been working in the industry, teaching patients about all that I'm discussing with you today,
Right.
I decided to retrain my breathing through a method called the Buteyko breathing method. And as I did that,
How do you spell that?
Buteyko. And in that process, the first thing that I noticed was I wasn't using my inhaler anymore. So I went from using my inhaler multiple times a day, every day, to not using it at all, to not needing the nebulizer. And then my allergies started getting better, and then the weight started coming off.
Wow.
And I mean, just like that. And I thought, this is crazy, And so I had asked a doctor that we worked with in the dental practice, and she explained to me that when our bodies oxygenate correctly, then our cells work the way that they're supposed to. And when our cells work the way, then our hormones work well. So our body doesn't just need us to breathe.
Right.
It needs us to oxygenate. We need to release the oxygen from our hemoglobin so that the body can heal on a cellular level.
Wow.
And, I knew this, but I didn't really comprehend the effect until I did it and experienced it myself.
Right.
And so I am now of normal weight, as one would say. And for the first time in my life, I've kept it off.
Wow.
I've kept it off now since 2019. And I am now a certified Buteyko breathing practitioner because I was profoundly affected by this.
Wow.
And working in the industry, I have seen how it's changed other people's lives. And so combining that with myofunctional therapy, I can help people breathe better and feel better. And then working with dentists here at Natural and Cosmetic Dentistry, we can help people really establish better skeletal structures and make room for their airway as well. So
Right. Well, when you were talking about the domino effect, it's almost like one system builds on another system, builds on another system. So, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
It's pretty interesting. But the thought that came to my mind is the study that, how does fat leave the body? Fat leaves the body through exhalation, which is fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is another component that's also affected by this.
right.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
revelation.
Well, and in a really short, simple way too, if you think about if the body is working really hard to oxygenate or breathe, you don't have much left for the body to do for you with other things, right?
Right.
You're already expecting it because the body wants to keep you alive. That's the
Right.
first and foremost thing. So if we're not oxygenating well, the very first place it's going to go is to your heart. Any oxygen that you get is going to go
Wow.
right to your heart because the job of the body is to keep you alive.
Right.
So as long as you're alive, that's good, right? And then it's like these other things that we also want to be healthy kind of fall to the back burner
Right.
because it's just doing what it needs to do.
It's like triage.
Yeah, it's triage. It's doing what it needs to do to keep the heart pumping.
Right. It's so funny. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, I'm hyperventilating because I'm like, okay, where's my tongue? Where's my, I'm like, you become so hyper aware of these things once you get the information. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I
Yes.
didn't mean to interrupt once
No,
again.
I don't think you did. I was done.
So then how long did it take you once you had started doing the exercises to see these effects?
Oh my gosh, it was ridiculous. I remember I was at my personal trainer's office at the studio, and she stops me and says, Maria, you haven't stopped to use your inhaler the last couple times.
Oh, wow.
And that was like 2 weeks in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's weird. I literally said to her, well, you're not working me hard enough. And she laughs and she's like, come on, Maria, we do this routine. I am working you just as hard as I've always worked you. And I left and didn't think anything, I still hadn't put 2 and 2 together.
Right.
And then a couple more weeks go by, and at this point I'm mouth taping as I'm working out.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Because I really wanted to maintain nasal breathing. And she would laugh
Right.
at me and say, there you go with the mouth, the nose breathing,
Yeah.
because we're always taught breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Right.
And I was determined to only breathe in and out through the nose as I was taught. And then it hit me when she mentioned it again. I realized, wait a minute, this is supposed to happen. My asthma is supposed to improve when I am breathing better.
Right.
And then I realized, wow, just in a few weeks, I wasn't needing my inhaler. That's how
Wow.
quickly that helped with the asthma.
Wow.
And then the wait was like a few months, and it's like a domino effect, and then it was the chronic congestion. I used to wake up every morning with congested nose, always had to blow it, spend 5-10 minutes like clearing my nasal passages.
Right.
It was months after that. I just remember like waking up, and again, it was until a few weeks later, I'm like, wait a minute, I haven't been blowing my nose every morning. You
Right.
don't realize the shift until it takes a while to make
it's
the
like a
connection.
dawning awareness.
Yes. So, I don't have that anymore, and it's always ongoing. It's always ongoing because it takes time for the body to heal,
Right.
right? So it's not like you take a pill and immediately you have this miraculous healing.
Right.
But when you give your body what it needs, it can start to heal on a cellular level, and you'll see changes happen over a period of time.
Right. Well, I can't wait to get there. And with my situation, what are my steps now to try to get more functional while I'm waiting for the long-term solution,
Right.
which may be surgery in my case, right?
Correct. We don't know until the doctor does his final assessment, but we are going to start with some myofunctional therapy and some breathing awareness. We're going to start establishing better breathing habits and breathing patterns so that you can oxygenate better,
Right.
okay? And myofunctional therapy so that we can help improve what is going on here with what we have, right? There's not a lot of space, but we're going to do what we can with what we've got, right?
Well, I couldn't find my straw. I'd ordered one, but I couldn't find it. But could you show us what that straw, the
Sure.
what's it called?
So I recommended a Remplenish water bottle, and this It has a patent on it to really help establish good swallow function with the tongue. And the way it's designed is that, you know, the tip of the tongue should always be at the roof of the mouth where it would hit when most people say the letter N. I hate to say, because some
N.
people actually do it, and their tip of their tongue is like in the middle of the roof of the mouth.
Okay.
But it's right behind your upper front teeth
In.
on the tissue. So
Okay.
not touching your front teeth,
Right.
but right behind. So the tip of the tongue would be here, and then the rest of the tongue suctions up to the palate. That's the proper resting position. And when you're drinking, the tip never moves.
Okay.
The tongue will then, the back of the tongue will then come down and draw the liquid into a bowl, if you will.
Okay.
And again, the tip never leaves. And then when you swallow, the tongue comes back up and pushes up against the palate and pushes the water down.
Got it.
And so this straw is designed and patented to help you establish that good swallow function. So I like to recommend it because it helps people at least start there.
Right.
You have to drink water anyway, right? And so you're staying hydrated and you're using your muscles the way that you're supposed to. And
Right.
then we'll work together one-on-one doing myofunctional therapy exercises and in other ways, different exercises to help strengthen your tongue and lips and get good function.
And this teaches you how to swallow properly as well.
How to swallow properly. Yes,
Right.
this is what this is about. It's about good, proper swallow. And they have patents on this, and they have studies about how it's improved people's snoring. You know, there's no claims that this stops sleep apnea or stops snoring. It improves the snoring. And then also we have to take into consideration the severity of the situation before we walk into it, right?
Right.
So
But it trains the tongue over time.
absolutely.
Fascinating. Well, that's the first thing that you can do is get one of these. I haven't started using mine yet. But yeah, so I'm very interested to get started on underway now because this is a 2 to 4 year solution, right? To get that device opening up the upper jaw to create enough space for the tongue. What is the surgical solution?
Surgical solution, you'd see an oral surgeon. They would go in. Basically, they core the bone. They kind of go in, and now this is above or beyond what I really know, but
Right,
I know
yeah.
they go in and they make cuts in the bone and they move it. They
Right.
just physically move the bone where it needs to go. So they make more room laterally and they move it forward. And then there's a healing process after that. Same thing though, we still do myofunctional therapy. We still do breath re-education. We still want to get good function after the surgery, right? Because we want
Right.
that tongue out of the airway. But that's the extent of my knowledge for the surgical
Gotcha.
portion.
So I obviously have many more steps in this process, but I wanted to give you an overview so that you have the awareness because who knows, maybe next week your child is scheduled to get orthodontics and have 4 teeth pulled. Stop! Get a second opinion. But thank you so much for going into this for everybody, and I'm very excited to get started with the myofunctional breathing techniques. But that's a little bit more in depth than I had originally thought. There's lots of measurements. So what is the first step? My first appointment, what will that look like?
So your first appointment with me would be a myofunctional evaluation. I will do some measurements. I will check your function. I will see how you swallow, how you say certain words. You know, how is your body compensating essentially?
Right.
I'm going to check your gait. How do you walk? What's your body doing when you walk? How do you stand? How do you sit? We're just looking to see where the compensations are because what a lot of people don't know is your tongue is connected to your toes through what we call body fascia. So there's connective tissue or connective tissue, and everything's just connected. I had a patient the other day where I was looking at her, what we call a palatal suction. The tongue just, suctioned up to the roof of the mouth. Mm-hmm. And I could see one side was very tight and one side was kind of hanging down. And I said, oh, I bet this side of your body is really tight. And she literally went into tears and just looked at me and said, how do you know? And I said, because the way your tongue is compensating right now tells me that your body is compensating as well. And she said, for years, I have been seeing chiropractors and this doctor and physical therapy, and they're just managing my discomfort, but they can't find a real problem. I've had x-rays, I've had this. And I said, well, you're extremely tongue-tied. And your body's really been compensating. Every time you chew, every time you swallow, your body is, we swallow hundreds of times a day.
Right.
When you go to the gym and you use a piece of equipment that's meant for, say, I don't know very much, but let's say it's used for, these muscles here.
Right.
And you're using it on your legs or whatever,
Right.
you're using the wrong thing for the different muscle, and you're going to strain something, right? She's using her tongue. It's very restricted. And so her body has to compensate somewhere else.
Right.
And that's causing
I've had
tension.
a lot of that. I think in our original meeting, you slightly looked at that. And I have the left side of my body, my foot, my hips, my everything, and then the right shoulder are way off. And that has to do with what's going on in the roof of my mouth. Who'da thunk, right? But this is all very fascinating. So I'll give you an update on this as I go along. It may be a few weeks or months before that happens, but now I have a course of action to take, and that in itself is a relief, because I realize, hey, a lot of what I just have felt like, why can't I get this problem solved, may have started back when I was, 14 years old.
Actually, probably a lot earlier.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. A lot earlier.
Yeah.
We just didn't know then what we know now.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and ding ding ding, ring the bell. And also I will be giving you Maria's information as well, and you can follow along with her. Thanks so much.